On my son's wedding day, I saw the bride with my husband broken heart, the ultimate betrayal. I never imagined that my son's happiest day would become the moment my entire life crumbled. But it did. On his wedding day, while everyone was smiling and toasting, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. I saw the bride, that sweet young woman who had only been part of our family for a year, kissing my husband. My husband. The man with whom I had shared 32 years of marriage. And it wasn't a father-in-law's kiss. It was the kiss of two people who knew each other in a way that no one else should know. I'm 63 now. I live alone in this house that once overflowed with laughter and conversation. The walls still hold echoes of what we were, of what I thought we were. Every morning I get up and make coffee just for myself, though for decades I made 2 cups without a second thought. There are rooms I no longer open. Photographs I keep face down. A telephone that hardly ever rings. My routine is simple, predictable, and safe. I wake up at dawn because sleep abandoned me long ago. I sit by the kitchen window and look at the garden I once tended with such care. Now it's neglected, overgrown with weeds. It's a perfect reflection of what I feel inside. The neighbors greet me politely when I go out to buy what I need. Donna Carmen, the one on the corner, always asks me how I am in that pitying voice I detest. She knows. Everyone knows. In a small town like this, secrets travel faster than the wind. But no one knows the whole story. No one really knows what happened that day, or everything that came after. There's a drawer in my room that I keep locked. Inside are the letters, the photographs, the evidence of a betrayal so profound that I still struggle to breathe when I think about it. Sometimes, on the darkest nights, I take out the key and hold it in my hand, wondering if I'll ever have the courage to open that drawer and face it all again. But I always put it back. Some wounds don't need to be reopened to keep hurting. My son. My Daniel. We haven't spoken in almost 2 years. He chose his side, and I chose the truth. That's a choice that leaves you alone, but with a clear conscience. Or at least that's what I tell myself on good days. On bad days, I wonder if it was worth it. If preserving my dignity justified losing my only child. I have friends, or rather, I had them. Marta and Rosa, my lifelong companions. But after what happened, things changed. The calls became less frequent. The invitations for coffee disappeared. I don't blame them. My tragedy was uncomfortable, too real, too close. It reminded them that it can happen to anyone. That marriages that seem solid can be rotten inside. That children can betray you. That family can be your greatest disappointment. Now I spend my days in a kind of limbo. I'm not really living, but I'm not dead either. I exist in this in-between space where the past is too painful to remember and the future is too empty to imagine. I read books I instantly forget. I watch TV shows without paying attention. I cook meals I barely touch. But there's something I do every single day without fail. Every afternoon, at exactly 5 o'clock, I sit in the living room armchair with a cup of tea and stare at the door. It's a silly habit, I know. No one's going to knock on that door. No one's going to come and apologize or explain why they did what they did. But I do it anyway. Maybe it's my way of keeping a tiny bit of hope alive. Or maybe it's just another way of torturing myself. The nights are the worst. When the silence in this house becomes so thick I can feel it pressing against my chest. I lie down on a bed too big for one person and stare at the ceiling, counting the cracks that have appeared over the years. Sometimes I cry. Other times, I just stay there, dry inside, with no tears left to shed because I've already used them all up. There's a photo album on the living room shelf. I haven't opened it in months, but I know exactly what's on every page. The first picture of Daniel when he was born, so tiny and perfect. His first day of school, with that toothless grin. His graduation, tall and proud. And then, the photos of his courtship with her. With Valeria. Valeria. That name that once filled me with joy now makes me nauseous. I remember the first time Daniel brought her home. It was a sunny, warm Sunday afternoon. She wore a white dress with yellow flowers, and her smile was so bright it lit up the whole room. I liked her immediately. She was polite, affectionate, and attentive. She called my husband Don Roberto with a respect that seemed so genuine. She helped me in the kitchen without me even asking. She listened to my stories with real interest. I thought I'd found a daughter. Someone who would keep me company when Daniel was busy. Someone with whom I could share recipes and womanly secrets. Someone who would care for my son the way he deserved. How blind I was. How naive. How stupid. But before I tell you how I discovered the truth, before I take you back to that horrific moment that tore my life in two, let me take you to the beginning. Let me show you what my life was like before everything fell apart. Because to understand the magnitude of the betrayal, you need to know what I lost. You need to see the happiness I thought I had to comprehend the abyss I fell into. Before I continue telling you what happened, what changed everything forever, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Turn on notifications, because stories like this need to be heard. And at the end, when you know the whole truth, tell me in the comments what you felt, if you've ever experienced something similar, or if you just need to vent. I'm here to listen. Now then, let me take you back to the beginning. I met Roberto when I was 23. I was working as a secretary in a downtown office, and he was the new accountant they had just hired. He was handsome, with that kind of understated beauty that only gets better with age. He had a way of looking at me that made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. His brown eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and that smile, God, that smile could brighten my darkest days. Our courtship was like something out of a movie. Walks in the park on Sundays. Movies on Saturday nights. Handwritten love letters that I kept in a special box. He courted me patiently, respectfully, in the old-fashioned way. He proposed after 2 years of dating, kneeling in the same park where we had our first kiss. We got married in the village church, surrounded by family and friends. I wore my mother's wedding dress, altered by the local seamstress. Roberto wore a suit borrowed from his older brother, but to me, he was the most elegant man in the world. We danced until our feet ached. We laughed until our cheeks hurt. It was perfect. The first years of our marriage were happy. We lived in a small but cozy apartment. I was still working, and Roberto had gotten a better position at a larger company. We saved every penny to buy our own house. We cooked together on weekends, inventing recipes with whatever we had in the fridge. We stayed up late, talking about our dreams, the children we would have, the life we would build together. Daniel arrived when I was 28. It was a difficult pregnancy, full of complications, but the moment I held him for the first time, all the pain was worth it. Roberto cried when he saw him. He cried tears of joy, of gratitude, of pure love. We promised to be the best parents in the world. We promised to give our son everything we lacked. We promised to love each other always, no matter what. And we kept those promises. For years, we kept them. We moved to a bigger house when Daniel was 5. It was a modest house in a quiet neighborhood, with a garden where he could play. I planted roses by the entrance because I had always loved roses. Roberto built a swing in the tree in the yard. On Sundays, we had family barbecues, inviting neighbors and friends. Our house was always filled with laughter, music, and life. Roberto was a good father. Patient, loving, and always there for Daniel. He went to all of Daniel's soccer games. He helped him with his math homework, the subject I was so bad at. He taught him to ride a bike, to whistle, and to tie knots. They were inseparable. Seeing them together filled my heart with such deep joy that sometimes I wondered if it was possible to be any happier. I dedicated myself to my home and family. I stopped working when Daniel was born because we wanted someone to always be home for him. I didn't mind. I found purpose in taking care of my home, in preparing delicious meals, in creating a warm space where my family wanted to be. I was good at it. I was happy doing it. The years passed in a kind of beautiful routine. Daniel grew up, got good grades, and brought friends home. Roberto climbed the corporate ladder, earned more, and gave us stability. I kept everything running smoothly. We were a perfect team. Or so I thought. We celebrated every birthday with homemade cakes. Every anniversary with romantic dinners. Every Christmas with elaborate decorations and lovingly wrapped gifts. We had traditions. Pizza and movie Fridays. Family cleaning Saturdays. Mass and a long lunch on Sundays. We were predictable, stable, happy. Roberto told me he loved me every day. He kissed me before leaving for work and when he came back. He hugged me from behind while I cooked. He brought me flowers for no reason at all. He made me feel desired, valued, loved. I never had any reason to doubt him. Never. When Daniel turned 20 and announced he wanted to study engineering at the university in the capital, it broke my heart to see him go, but I was proud. Roberto and I helped him move, to settle into his small student apartment. We cried on the way back home, but they were tears of pride mixed with nostalgia. The house felt empty without him. Too big, too quiet. But Roberto and I adapted. We rediscovered our relationship. We traveled a bit. We went out to dinner more often. We talked about plans for our future, for our retirement. We dreamed of being grandparents someday, of filling that empty house with the laughter of grandchildren. It was during Daniel's junior year at university that he met Valeria. He called us, excited, talking so fast we could barely understand him. He'd met a girl. A special girl. He wanted to bring her home so we could meet her. They arrived one spring weekend. I remember making his favorite meal, my mother's stew that he loved so much. I cleaned the house until it shone. I put on my best dress. I was nervous like a teenager. I wanted to make a good impression on the girl who had captured my son's heart. When I saw her get out of the car, I was surprised by how young she looked. She was 21, but she looked younger. She was beautiful in a delicate way, with long, dark hair, large, expressive eyes, and a shy smile. She looked sweet. Innocent. Perfect for my Daniel. Mrs. Elena, he said, extending his hand. It's a pleasure to meet you. Daniel speaks so highly of you. Her voice was soft, almost musical. I liked her immediately. Roberto came out to greet them as well. I saw Valeria greet him respectfully, calling him Don Roberto, lowering her gaze slightly as well-mannered girls do. He smiled at her with that paternal warmth he always showed to Daniel's friends. That first visit was wonderful. Valeria was lovely. She helped set the table without me even asking. She sincerely praised my cooking. She listened to my stories about Daniel's childhood with genuine interest. She laughed at just the right moments. She asked the right questions. She was perfect. Daniel gazed at her adoringly. It was obvious he was deeply in love. And she seemed to love him too. They held hands under the table. They looked at each other with that intensity only young lovers possess. It was beautiful to see. Roberto also seemed delighted with her. After they left, he told me that Daniel had found a good woman. That she seemed grounded, mature, with good values. That we would be lucky to have her in the family. I completely agreed. The visits became more frequent. Valeria came with Daniel almost every weekend. Sometimes they stayed overnight, in separate rooms of course, because even though they were adults, certain rules were respected in my house. She never complained. She never questioned anything. She simply adapted to our customs with a grace that impressed me. I began to love her like a daughter. I taught her my bread recipe. We shared womanly secrets while washing dishes. She told me about her family, about her mother who had died when she was a child, about her father who worked long hours and was almost never home. Her story broke my heart. I wanted to be the mother figure she had never known. Roberto also developed a special affection for her. Sometimes I would see them talking in the garden while Daniel was inside watching television. He would give her advice about her studies, about life. She would listen to him attentively, as if every word were pure gold. It was sweet to see how she had become part of our family. After a year of dating, Daniel called us to give us the news. He was getting married. He had proposed and Valeria had accepted. They were euphoric, talking about their plans, about their future together. I cried tears of joy. My baby was getting married. He was going to start his own family. It was the natural order of things, but it still hurt a little, that sweet pain of seeing your child grow up and leave the nest. Roberto was just as excited. We toasted with champagne that night, celebrating our son's future. We talked about the wedding, about helping them financially, about how proud we were of them both. The following months were a whirlwind of preparations. Valeria and I spent hours together choosing flowers, tasting cakes, searching for the perfect dress. She asked for my opinion on everything. She made me feel important, needed, loved. It was the mother-daughter relationship I had always dreamed of having. Roberto helped with the finances. He was generous, perhaps too much so, but he wanted his son to have the wedding of his dreams. He worked overtime to save more. He said you only get married once, and it was worth the effort. I was so happy. So full of hope. So blind. I never noticed the glances. The small, secret smiles. The moments when Roberto and Valeria lingered, talking a little longer than necessary. The text messages he received and answered quickly, putting his phone away before I could see. The times he offered to drive Valeria somewhere when Daniel was busy. I never saw the signs because I wasn't looking for them. Because I trusted. Because I loved. Because I was naive. But there were moments, now that I think about it. Little moments that my subconscious registered but that my conscious mind rejected. Like that time I walked into the kitchen and found them very close to each other, and they quickly separated when they saw me. Or when I heard Roberto talking on the phone in a low voice and he hung up abruptly when I approached. Or when Valeria mentioned something about Roberto that he had never told me. But I ignored them. I rationalized them. I buried them under layers of trust and love and denial. The wedding day arrived. It was a perfect, sunny Saturday in June. The ceremony would be held in the village church at 4 in the afternoon, followed by a reception in the most beautiful event hall we could afford. I woke up early that morning, filled with nervous energy. I had so much to do. Help Valeria get ready. Make sure everything was perfect. Be the mother of the groom everyone expected me to be. Roberto was still asleep when I woke up. I let him rest. He had been working so hard, he was so tired. He deserved to sleep a little longer. I went to Valeria's house around 10 o'clock. She was staying with her father that last night of her single life, as was tradition. When I arrived, I found her surrounded by her friends, all laughing and drinking champagne, helping her with her makeup and hair. She looked beautiful. Her dress was simple yet elegant, made of white lace that fit her like a glove. Her hair was styled in a loose bun adorned with small white flowers. Her makeup was natural, enhancing her beauty without concealing her features. When she saw me, she smiled so warmly that I felt my heart swell with joy. "Elena," he said, using my name without the Mrs. for the first time. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for everything." I hugged her, feeling tears sting my eyes. "Welcome to the family, my daughter." I spent the next few hours helping her, making sure everything was perfect. We took pictures. We laughed. We cried a little. It was one of the happiest moments of my life. I arrived at the church an hour before the ceremony. Roberto was already there, looking incredibly handsome in his new suit. Daniel was nervous, pacing back and forth, adjusting his tie every 2 minutes. I calmed them both down, playing my role as wife and mother with decades of experience. The guests began to arrive. The church filled with familiar faces, family and friends. Everyone was smiling, excited for the celebration. The atmosphere was pure joy. The ceremony was beautiful. Valeria walked down the aisle on her father's arm, radiant. Daniel waited for her at the altar with tears in his eyes. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, words of eternal love and promises of fidelity. They kissed when the priest pronounced them husband and wife, and we all applauded. I cried throughout the entire ceremony. I cried tears of joy, pride, and nostalgia for the baby who had grown so quickly. Roberto squeezed my hand, sharing that moment with me as we had shared so many others. The reception began with toasts and speeches. I gave a speech about Daniel, about the wonderful man he had become, and how happy I was to welcome Valeria into our family. Roberto spoke about love, commitment, and building a life together. His words were beautiful, full of wisdom and affection. What a hypocrite he was. What a liar. But I didn't know it yet. I was still living in my bubble of happiness. I still believed in my perfect marriage, my perfect family, my perfect life. The food was delicious. The music was lively. People were dancing and laughing. It was exactly the celebration we had planned. Everything was going perfectly. I danced with Daniel, holding him close, whispering how much I loved him. I danced with Roberto, feeling lucky to have a husband who had been such a good father, such a good partner. I felt on top of the world. It was after dinner that I needed to use the restroom. The lounge was on the second floor, and the main restrooms were occupied, so I decided to go downstairs to the first floor where there were other facilities. I went downstairs, holding onto the banister because my heels were uncomfortable after so many hours. The first floor hallway was empty and silent, a stark contrast to the noise of the party upstairs. I walked toward the bathroom, but stopped when I heard voices. They were coming from a small storage room at the end of the hall. The door was ajar. Something in the tone of those voices made me stop. Something intimate. Urgent. I approached silently. I don't know why. Perhaps curiosity. Perhaps instinct. Perhaps the universe finally decided to show me the truth. I looked through the crack in the door. Yes, I saw my husband with his hand on the back of Valeria's neck, pulling her towards him. I saw Valeria with her arms around his neck. I saw their lips meet in a kiss that was neither paternal, nor innocent, nor casual. It was a lover's kiss. A kiss between people who knew each other intimately. A kiss that spoke of history, of shared secrets, of a relationship that went far beyond father-in-law and daughter-in-law. My mind went blank. I literally couldn't process what I was seeing. It was as if my brain had shut down, unable to reconcile the image before my eyes with the reality I knew. They didn't see me. They were too engrossed in each other. I heard Roberto whisper something. I heard Valeria laugh softly, that kind of intimate laugh you only share with someone you know very well. "We have to go back," she said, her voice barely audible. "I know," he replied. "But I needed a moment alone with you. This day has been torture." "Me too. But we're doing fine. Nobody suspects a thing. Elena has no idea. She's so trusting, so naive." Those words. Those damn words. Talking about me like I'm a fool. Like my confidence is weakness. Like my love is stupidity. Something inside me broke at that moment. It wasn't a dramatic break. It was silent, definitive, like a glass falling on a carpet. It breaks the same way, but without making a sound. I took a step back. Then another. My legs moved of their own accord, taking me away from that door, away from that truth, away from the destruction of everything I knew. I went upstairs like an automaton. I went back to the living room. The music was still playing. People were still dancing. Daniel was still smiling. Everything was the same. But I had changed forever. I sat down at my table, clutching my wine glass with trembling hands. I drank. I drank more. I needed something to numb the pain that was beginning to spread in my chest like ink in water. A few minutes later, Roberto returned to the party. He seemed normal, relaxed, and smiling. He came over to me and kissed me on the cheek. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice sounding strange even to me. I needed fresh air. "It's hot in here." "Liar. Liar. Liar." Valeria appeared shortly after, adjusting her dress, touching up her lipstick. She looked radiant, happy, perfect. No one would have imagined what she had just done. What she had been doing. For how long? She danced with Daniel. She kissed him. She smiled at him lovingly. And I wondered how it was possible. How could she kiss my son after kissing my husband? How could she live with that lie? How could she be so cruel? The rest of the night passed in a haze. I smiled when I was expected to smile. I spoke when I was expected to speak. I acted like the groom's happy mother. But inside I was dying. Inside I was screaming. Roberto and I returned home late that night. Daniel and Valeria had left for their honeymoon, a beach trip we had given them as a gift. The house was quiet and empty. I took off my shoes and sat down on the sofa. Roberto loosened his tie and poured himself a whiskey. "It was a beautiful day," she said, sitting down next to me. "Our son is married. I can't believe it." I looked at him. I really looked at him. I tried to see some sign of guilt, of remorse, of anything on his face. But I only saw the man I knew. The man I had trusted for 32 years. The man who had just betrayed me in the most horrible way imaginable. "Are you okay?" she asked, noticing my silence. "You look pale." "I'm tired," I lied. "It's been a long day." "Go to sleep. I'll be up in a little while." I went up to our room. I took off my dress. I took off my makeup. I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman who stared back at me. She looked old, tired, broken. I lay down on the bed, on the side that had been mine for decades. Roberto came up an hour later. He lay down next to me. He kissed me on the forehead, as he did every night. "I love you," he whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words were stuck in my throat, mixed with bile and pain and rage. He fell asleep quickly. I heard him snoring softly, so calm, so peaceful. As if he hadn't done anything wrong. As if he hadn't destroyed everything. I didn't sleep that night. Nor the next. Nor the next. I spent days in a kind of shock. I was on autopilot. I cooked, I cleaned, I smiled when necessary. But inside I was paralyzed, unable to fully process what I had seen. Part of me wanted to believe I'd imagined it. That it was the stress of the day, the tiredness, the wine. But I knew it was real. As real as the air I breathed. I started seeing signs everywhere. Things I had previously ignored now took on a sinister meaning. The text messages Roberto deleted immediately. The calls he took in another room. The times he came home late from work smelling of a cologne that wasn't mine. I checked his phone one night while he was sleeping. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped it. I found deleted messages, but I was able to recover some. Conversations with a number saved as office. But they weren't work-related messages. "I miss you. I can't wait to see you. She doesn't know anything. You are mine, you have always been mine." Messages dated months ago. Years ago. From before Daniel and Valeria got engaged. From before I even met her. I threw up in the bathroom that night, emptying my stomach until only dry retches remained. Roberto woke up to the noise and came to check on me. He stroked my hair as I shivered over the toilet, and all I could think about was how much I hated him. How much I hated his hands on me. How much I hated his fake, concerned voice. I started investigating. Discreetly, carefully. I spoke with neighbors, acquaintances, asking casual questions. I discovered that Roberto and Valeria had been seen together several times. In cafes. In the park. Always with reasonable excuses. He was helping her with something. She needed advice. They were family, after all. But now I knew the truth. They weren't family. They were lovers. I confronted Roberto 3 weeks after the wedding. I couldn't take it anymore. The weight of the secret was killing me. It was a Sunday night. We had eaten dinner in silence, as we had been doing lately. He was in the living room watching television. I was in the kitchen, washing the dishes with hands that trembled with suppressed rage. I turned off the tap. I dried my hands. I walked into the living room. I stood in front of the television, blocking his view. "We need to talk," I said. He sighed, irritated. "Elena, I'm watching this." "I don't care. Turn it off." Something in my tone caught his attention. He grabbed the remote and turned off the TV. He looked at me with an expression that was meant to be concerned, but which I could now see was just annoyance. "What's happening?" "Valeria," I said simply. I saw her face change. It was only a second, a micro moment of panic, but I saw it. Then she composed herself, putting on her mask of confusion. "What's wrong with Valeria?" I saw them. On their wedding day. I saw them kissing. Silence. A silence so dense I could feel it pressing against my ears. He didn't deny it immediately, and that told me everything I needed to know. An innocent man would have denied it immediately, confused, offended. But Roberto just stood there, calculating, thinking about what to say. Elena, she finally began, her voice careful. I don't know what you think you saw, but... No, I interrupted him. Don't insult me with lies anymore. I saw them. I heard them. I know everything. You don't know anything, she said, her voice turning cold. You're imagining things. You're jealous because Daniel got married and doesn't need you as much anymore. That accusation hit me like a slap in the face. It tried to twist the situation, to make me doubt my own reality. But I had seen too much. I knew too much. I saw your phone, I said. I read the messages. His face went pale. Then red. Then, something inside him changed. The mask fell away completely. There was no point in pretending anymore. How long? I asked, my voice breaking. How long have you been sleeping with our son's wife? It's not what you think. So what is it? Enlighten me, Roberto. Explain to me how kissing your daughter-in-law, sending her love messages, betraying your wife and son isn't what I think. He got up from the sofa, walked to the window, his back to me. When he spoke, his voice was different. Harsher. More honest. It started before she met Daniel. Those words took my breath away. Before Daniel. Before everything. What? I could barely whisper. I met her at work. She was doing an internship. She was beautiful, young, full of life. She made me feel alive again. She made me feel young. You're sick, I said, feeling nauseous. It's a girl. She's the same age as our son. She's 23 years old. She's an adult woman. And you're 56. You're a dirty old man who took advantage of a vulnerable girl. He turned away, his eyes cold. She's not vulnerable. She knew exactly what she was doing. She came looking for me. And that's okay? Is that why you betrayed 32 years of marriage? Our marriage was dead years ago, Elena. You just didn't want to see it. Those words cut me deeper than anything else. Because a part of me wondered if she was right. If I had been so focused on being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, that I hadn't noticed my marriage was falling apart. And Daniel? I asked, tears finally falling. How could you do this to your own son? For the first time, I saw something resembling guilt cross her face. But it was fleeting. That was an accident. She met Daniel at university. He fell in love with her. I tried to end things, but you couldn't. Because you're selfish. Because you preferred your pleasure over your son's well-being. Daniel never has to know. Nobody has to know. We can go on as usual. I laughed. It was a bitter, broken laugh, full of pain. Carry on as usual? Do you expect me to live with this? That I can see that woman at family dinners knowing she's sleeping with my husband? It's just sex, Elena. It doesn't mean anything. Maybe for you. For me, it means everything. It means that everything I thought I had was a lie. That the man I married doesn't exist. That my whole life has been a farce. Roberto approached, trying to touch me. I pushed him away violently. Don't touch me. Never touch me again. Elena, please. We can get through this. I'll break up with her. We'll be us again. There is no us. Not anymore. I want a divorce. Her expression shifted from pleading to anger in an instant. If you do that, Daniel will find out everything. Do you want to destroy your son? There it was. The threat he'd been waiting for. Using Daniel as a shield for his disgusting behavior. He deserves to know the truth. The truth will destroy him. He just got married. He's happy. Do you really want to ruin that? And there lay my dilemma. Telling Daniel meant breaking his heart, destroying his marriage, ruining his life. Not telling him meant living with this lie, protecting those who had betrayed me, swallowing my pain forever. Go, I finally said. Leave this house now. This is my home too. I don't care. Leave or I'll call the police. He looked at me with pure hatred. In that moment, I saw the real Roberto. Not the charming man I had known. Not the loving father I thought he was. But the selfish, manipulative, cruel man who had been hiding all this time. This is a mistake, he said. You're going to regret it. The only thing I regret is having wasted 32 years of my life with you. He left that night. He packed a suitcase and left. I didn't know where. I didn't care. Probably with her. Probably to find comfort in the arms of the woman who had destroyed my family. I was left alone in that oversized house, surrounded by memories that were now tainted. Every photo on the wall was a lie. Every object a mockery. 32 years of shared life reduced to ashes. The following days were the darkest of my life. I didn't eat. I barely slept. I sat in the living room, staring into space, trying to process the improcessable. Daniel called, asking why his father wasn't answering the phone. I told him we were having problems, that we needed space. I didn't give him details. I couldn't. Not yet. What kind of problems? He asked, his voice filled with concern. Relationship problems, son. Nothing to worry about. But he was worried. He wanted to come home. I convinced him to stay, to enjoy his honeymoon, that we'd work it out. Another lie. So many lies. Marta and Rosa came to visit me when they found out Roberto had left. They tried to comfort me, but I didn't tell them the whole truth. I couldn't. The shame was too great. How can you admit that your husband left you for your son's wife? How can you say those words out loud without feeling like you're dying inside? I told them we had grown up apart. That he had had an affair with someone from work. Half-truths that were easier to swallow. Weeks passed. Roberto tried to contact me several times. Calls I didn't answer. Messages I deleted without reading. I didn't want to know anything about him. But then I discovered something that changed everything. Something that made this nightmare even worse. I was cleaning Roberto's office, packing his things to send to wherever he was living. I found a box hidden at the back of his closet. Inside were documents, legal papers, and photographs. Photographs of Valeria. But they weren't recent. They were from years ago. Younger Valeria. Teenage Valeria. Little Valeria. And there were letters. Letters written by Roberto to an address I didn't recognize. Letters dated more than 10 years ago. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would explode as I read. And what I read brought me to my knees. Roberto had known Valeria since she was 14. He had been a friend of her father. He had watched her grow up. And at some point, his interest had become inappropriate. The letters made that clear. He had been waiting. Waiting for her to grow up. Waiting for his chance. He had manipulated her. He had seduced her when he was barely of legal age. And then, when she met Daniel, instead of doing the right thing, he had continued the affair. He had allowed his son to fall in love with his mistress. He had walked her down the aisle of the church knowing that he would sleep with her again that night. It was worse than I had imagined. Much worse. I called Daniel that night. He and Valeria had returned from their honeymoon. They were settling into their new apartment. Son, I said, my voice trembling. I need you to come home. Just you. It's urgent. Mom, what's wrong? You're scaring me. Please. Come tomorrow. There's something you need to know. I didn't sleep that night. I mentally rehearsed how to tell her. How to break her heart in the least painful way possible. But there was no gentle way to say what I had to say. Daniel arrived the following day at noon. He looked tanned, happy, full of life. The honeymoon had done him good. It broke my heart to know that I was about to destroy that happiness. Mom, she said, hugging me. You look terrible. What's going on? I sat him down in the living room. I poured him a glass of water. I sat across from him, holding the box of documents and photographs. What I'm about to tell you will change your life, I began. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, my son. You're scaring me. What is this? It's about your father. And about Valeria. I saw how her face changed, how fear began to seep into her eyes. I told her everything. Every horrible detail. I showed her the photographs, the letters, the messages. I watched her break down in front of me, the tears streaming down her face, her hands trembling as she clutched the evidence of the greatest betrayal. No, he kept saying. No, no, no. This can't be real. I'm sorry, son. I'm so sorry. How long have you known? I saw something on your wedding day. But I didn't realize the extent of it until now. He stood up abruptly, knocking over the coffee table, screaming in rage and pain. He punched the wall, leaving a hole in the plaster. He wept as I hadn't seen him cry since he was a child. And I could do nothing but hold him up while his world crumbled. I'm going to kill him, she sobbed. I'm going to kill that son of a bitch. No, Daniel. He's not worth it. He doesn't deserve you ruining your life for him. And Valeria? Did she know? Did she know all this time? Yes. She knew. More tears. More anger. More pain. Daniel confronted Valeria that same afternoon. I wasn't there, but she told me about it later. At first, she denied everything. Then, when he showed her the evidence, she changed her story. She said Roberto had manipulated her, that she was a victim, that she loved Daniel, and that the affair with Roberto was over. But Daniel wasn't stupid. He saw the truth in her eyes. He saw that he had been a pawn in a sick game between his father and his wife. He filed for divorce immediately. Valeria tried to convince him to reconsider, that they could overcome this. But he was inflexible. Their marriage had lasted less than 2 months. Roberto showed up when he found out. He tried to talk to Daniel, but my son didn't want to see him. He told him he was dead to him. That he never wanted to hear from him again. Roberto tried to talk to me too. He showed up at the house one night, drunk, crying, begging for forgiveness. I slammed the door in his face. The following months were a hell of legal proceedings. Divorce. Division of assets. Battles over the house, over the money, over everything we had built together. Roberto tried to take everything. He hired an expensive lawyer who portrayed me as a bitter wife exaggerating a simple affair. But I had proof. I had the messages, the photographs, the letters. And I had the truth on my side. In the end, I kept the house and half of everything else. It wasn't what I deserved after 32 years, but it was enough to survive. Daniel moved back home for a while. He was broken, unable to function on his own. I took care of him like I did when he was a child. I made his favorite meals. I let him cry on my shoulder. I reminded him every day that it wasn't his fault, that he was the victim in all of this. But something about him had changed. He had lost that light in his eyes. That trust in the world. His father had betrayed him in the worst possible way, and that wound would never fully heal. Valeria tried to contact him several times. Calls, messages, showing up at his work. Daniel obtained a restraining order. He wanted nothing to do with her. Roberto also tried to reach out. He wrote long letters explaining, justifying, pleading. Daniel burned them all without reading them. A year passed. Then too. Daniel eventually moved again, finding a new job in another city. He needed a fresh start, far from the memories, far from the pain. We talk regularly, but there's a sadness in our conversations that never goes away. We were both betrayed. We both lost someone we loved. We're both trying to rebuild lives that were shattered. I stayed in this house. Some days I wonder why. Why I didn't sell it and move somewhere else. But I think it's because I need these memories, even the painful ones. I need to remember who I was, what I had, what I lost. It's my way of processing, of healing. I've learned to live with the pain. It doesn't go away, but it becomes more manageable. Like a constant toothache that you learn to ignore most of the time. Marta and Rosa are still my friends, although things were never the same again. There's an unease now, an awareness that my tragedy could be theirs. That no marriage is safe. That trust is fragile. I see Roberto occasionally in town. He hasn't aged well. He looks tired, defeated. I heard that Valeria eventually left him, that she found someone younger, more useful. There's a certain poetic justice in that, I suppose. He tries to talk to me when we pass each other. I ignore him. I have nothing to say to him. I no longer feel anger toward him. Only indifference. And that, I think, is worse for him than hatred. Now, sitting in this quiet house, looking at the photos I decided to leave on the walls, I wonder what would have happened if I had seen the sign sooner. If I had been less trusting, more suspicious. Could I have prevented all of this? But the truth is, you can't protect yourself from everything. You can't live in constant fear of being betrayed. That's no life. I trusted because I loved. And yes, I was hurt. I was broken. But I don't regret loving. I regret loving the wrong people. I learned that true love doesn't always save, but it does teach us to endure. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but rather letting go of the poison that's killing us from the inside. That betrayal hurts the most when it comes from someone we swore to protect. And that sometimes, the only way to find peace is to accept that some questions will never have answers. Why did he do it? When did he stop loving me? Was what we had ever real? I'll never know the true answers. And I've learned to live with that. I've lived long enough to know that life isn't fair, but it's not cruel without purpose either. Every pain has its lesson. Every loss, its hidden gift. And every scar, its story of survival. My scar reminds me that I am stronger than I thought. That I can survive the impossible. That I can rebuild myself after being completely destroyed. I am not the same woman I was. I am tougher, wiser, more careful. But I am also more compassionate, more understanding, more human. If you made it this far, if you listened to my whole story without judging me, thank you. Thank you for giving me the space to vent, to heal a little more with each word shared. Now I have a question for you. Tell me your story in the comments. Have you experienced a similar betrayal? Have you lost someone you loved? Have you discovered secrets that changed everything? You are not alone. I am here, and this community is here, to listen to you without judgment. Like this video if you felt something, if my story touched your heart. Share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone in their pain. And subscribe, because I'll keep sharing stories of real people who have survived the impossible. Remember, pain is inevitable, but eternal suffering is optional. We can choose to heal. We can choose to move forward. We can choose to tell our story and, in doing so, release some of the burden we carry. Sending you a hug, wherever you are. And I hope to read your comments. Because in the end, we are all survivors of something. And our stories, however painful, deserve to be told.